So I'll begin with prayer and we'll get right into it. So Father Yah, we thank you, dear Father, for this day, for allowing us to enter into your rest. Thank you, dear Father, for just continuously being with us and drawing us closer and closer to you, Yah, through your word. Yah, we just thank you, dear Father, for just continuously allowing us to grow in your character. May we just continue, dear Father, to be flat, like Brother Leon said earlier, that we just continue to humble ourselves day in and day out, that we do not get puffed up, that we do not let pride, ego, bitterness get deep rooted within us and take over, but that we allow you to purify us and cleanse us thoroughly each and every day. So yeah, we just thank you and we praise you, dear Father, for this time. May it be a blessed time. May Yeshua HaMashiach himself come out and talk to the people, yeah. Tell the people the things that they need to hear. That way it can soothe their soul, soothe their mind, soothe their heart. That way we can go about our week being better than we were last week. So y'all just continue to Father to help us to be a light, that it sits on top of a hill, not under a basket. That we be a people, that we let it shine bright, and that we are a light to friends and family and strangers and everybody that we come in contact with, y'all. So y'all just continue to Father to help us to be the priestly people that you called us to be. That we just continue to be a light, we continue to shine, we continue to not have any hidden motives, any hidden agendas, but that we truly are motivated by just pure love for you and just wanting to have a heart posture for you and to cleave unto you and to be wrapped around you and be engrossed in your Torah. That is second nature for us to read the Torah. It's second nature for us to operate in Torah. So yeah, we just thank you, we praise you, we love you. Just continue to be with us today. Bless this time in Yeshua HaMashiach's mighty name we pray. Hallelujah and amen. All right. So it shouldn't be before you too long. But the Torah study was really good this morning, talking about the glory and how it was more about revelation. It just got me to like, man, that's the spirit. Man, that's the spirit. So we'll get right into it. So the title for today's lesson is On the Road to Revelation. All right, on the road to revelation. All right, so we are fresh out of Passover season, and it was a beautiful time, and it was the beginning of the year for festivals, right? So the Passover is like the beginning of the year of festivals. There's 3 or 4 different New Years, and so this is one of the many New Years, and this is the New Year for festivals. And so it was a beautiful time, but it's not it. This is just the beginning of the journey. So we broke away from bondage into freedom, but now that we are freed, like Morey said, we have to now walk in that freedom, or you have to walk it out, walk freedom out. So now we are on the road to the mountain, the road to revelation, right? Where there will be obstacles in the wilderness, but it's there for us to get to the end, right? Get to the end of the road. So who said walking in freedom would be easy, right? It's not easy. Being freed, right, is an act of God, but you have to take control of the journey. All right. So that's what freedom looks like. Freedom, Yah frees you, but after he frees you, you still have to walk and take control of your journey after he frees you. All right. So that's the important part. And it's still a two-way street. Like you can't just free us and then we just go and do what we want to do. You can't just free us and, we just live any way we want to live. Right. He freed us so that way we can serve him. Right. Moshe kept telling Pharaoh over and over again, let my people go so that they may serve me. Right. All right. So Yah's not going to walk for you. Right. He puts you into position where you can walk for yourself. He's guiding, but you got to be willing to walk. He's guiding, but you have to be willing to walk. All right. So once again, made out of Passover season. Right. And we're heading right on into Shavuot. So this is the beginning of a beautiful journey. All right. So let's see next. All right. So now our next pit stop is the mountain. So when we think about the first Passover ever done, right, go all the way back to Egypt, right after we crossed over the sea. All right. What was the first instant that happened right when we crossed over the sea? Thirsty. Right by the wilderness of Shur out there in Marah, right? The bitterness, right? So right after we were freed and we crossed the sea, we find ourselves in the desert at Marah, all right? So this is where we at. They find ourselves, we're on our journey in Marah, thirsty, been 3 days, ain't had no water and no food. They just like, man, complaining. Man, what's going on around here? Right? So that's what's going on right here. And so there was something interesting in Exodus 15:23 about this particular situation on why the waters were bitter and why this is the first instance that the Israelites occurred after they crossed the Red Sea. So we're gonna look into Exodus 15. So let's go to Exodus 15 real quick. We'll start at verse 21, I believe. So Exodus 15. All right, let's start in verse 22. So Exodus 15:22. All right. So, hallelujah, if you're there.
Hallelujah.
All right. So it says Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. Then they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Now, when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. And the people complained against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. And when he cast it into the waters were made sweet. Right? So here's something interesting in Exodus 23. All right. So they came to Marah, but they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. That is why it is named Marah. All right. So now looking at this verse and why it's so significant, there was this Magi of Mezerich. So this was a person who was part of the Hasidic movement in the early 17 or late 1700s, was a student of, I believe, Rabbi Baal Shem Tov. And so he discovered something interesting within the linguistics of this verse. And so when we look at the highlighted part where it says, because it was bitter, we have ki marim hem. Now, Hebrew students, basic Hebrew. Now, this one right here could be a personal pronoun that can mean what? Him. If you remember, this is one of the first lessons talking about pronouns. Him. It's a personal pronoun. Because the verse says, because it was bitter, when Hebrew is saying something else. They. So let me reread this real quick. So they came to Marah, but they could not drink the water of Marah because they were bitter. That is why it was named Marah. All right. So this verse is really saying that they were bitter. So they couldn't drink the water because they were bitter. It wasn't the water, it was them. This is why we say that the physical and spiritual merges, because your psychological bitterness can change the perception of how you view everything. All right. They were so bitter that they couldn't even see the blessing that was right in front of them. And that's what happens when you become bitter. When you can become bitter, your mind becomes so clouded that everything around you becomes negative. You miss on opportunities because now you enter into a realm of bitterness and you just in this constant funk of being negative. Right. And so I have an example, we educators. So, I have kids at my school, right, kind of. I have kids at my school that say, they want to do better. I want to make good grades. I want to make a lot of money. I want to be rich. I want to have this lifestyle. I want to drive this kind of car. They say all this good stuff. They talk about this wonderful, abundant life that they want. They talk about these high expectations and goals that they want. But when it comes to the way they actually behave and the way they move, they're always blaming the teachers. For getting in trouble. They always blaming their classmates. They blaming their parents. They blaming everybody around them for why everything going wrong. But when you really look at it and we really pin it down, like the odor that you keep smelling, like you keep talking about all the stuff you want and all the stuff you're doing, but you're blaming everybody for your downfall. And you keep smelling this odor. So you go everywhere, it's this odor. They did this to me. No, they did this to me. They racist. No, they did this. I can't achieve because they holding me back. The teacher doing too much. And they're doing all this stuff. And so every time you go somewhere, it's always an odor. You smell an odor everywhere you go. There's an odor. When you realize it, the odor that you keep thinking that you smell all the people is really from you. You're the one with the odor. But you think everyone around you is the one with the odor. And that's what happens with bitter people. Bitter people don't realize they're the one with the odor. So everything they come in contact with, that's the reason why it's bitter. That's the reason why it's off. You're the reason why I'm this way. It's always an excuse, and it's always something negative, even when what's right in front of you could be a positive outcome. That's what happens when you let the root of bitterness take over. The waters weren't even bad. They were the ones bad. They couldn't even realize that they had a blessing right there in front of them. Right? So if you can't recognize you have bitterness in your soul that you need to take care of, you'll never reflect on your own actions and actually grow to find peace. Never. Never. So we have to realize that a lot of times, if we're constantly smelling odors all over the place, if everything around us is always negative, never have anything positive to say about nothing, it seems like everything around you is hopeless. Maybe you're the one that's bitter. Maybe you're the one that's the problem. Just like the Israelites after they just got freed. Right. So that right there proves that Pesach is the beginning of this journey. Because after they was freed, they still had a lot of purging to do. They're still bitter. They're still in this mind space of like, man, I don't know what's going on. Take me back. This is too much. Right. So there's still a lot of purging that still needs to happen. Right? So we see that even though Yah freed the people, there is still a whole lot of work to do. Pesach marks the beginning of a journey of cleansing. On the road to Shavuot, we will still have to be pruned, even in the midst of us walking in our freedom. So just because we're walking in freedom does not give us the go-ahead to now, I'm done. It's over. I made it. No. It's now you have to walk in it. Now you have to be pruned. Now it's time to improve. I freed you from the bondage. I freed you from the person that was holding you back. Now you have the freedom to serve me now. So now, excuse, now it's time for you to improve. Now it's time for you to improve. So that's the whole point of freedom, is for you to improve. Yes. Okay. So let's look more into the psychology of bitterness, right? Let's look more into the psychology of bitterness. So I got this from, I forgot the website name, but it's a .org psychological website. So whatever, it's trusted. All right, so a bitterness definition from psychology. So it says, in psychology, the emotional reaction and mood of bitterness is referred to as embitterment. It is an emotional state of feeling let down and unable to do anything about it. Embitterment is different than anger because although it involves the same outrage, it also involves feeling helpless to change things. So that's how serious bitterness can really affect the person. Like when you allow yourself to become so bitter, you get to a place where you feel completely hopeless and that nothing can change, which is why the Israelites saw the water and complained about not having water. Where do you do that at? It's right there. And then Moshe had to cry out. They get the olive branch and put it in the water. The olive branch. It reminds me of someone was mentioned as an olive branch. Romans 11. We have Zechariah 4. The Messiah. He's likened as an olive branch. So he makes the bitterness sweet.
Go ahead, son. Talk to him. Talk to him. All right.
So we have to lean on the word, lean on Yeshua, right? To change our bitterness into sweetness. Right? Let's read a little bit further into bitterness. So bitterness is a psychological disorder. Is bitterness serious? German professor and psychiatrist Michael Linden certainly thinks so. He was the first to propose that bitterness should be its own psychological disorder, calling it post-traumatic embitterment disorder. Bitterness is so bad, it should be its own disorder. That's how bad bitterness is. Because it's a state of constantly being negative. You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Everything is just constantly negative. Everything is just constantly bitter. Everything is just constantly, woe is me. There's no end in sight. This is the reason why this is happening. This will never get better. All that stuff is just bitterness. So Lennon noticed that some people experience a life trauma, such as the death of a loved one or serious illness, and don't develop the fear-based anxiety that leads to a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. But they still suffer long-term negative psychological reactions. So when we think about bitterness, bitterness comes from years of trauma and sin. Bitterness comes from years of trauma and sin. Let's call it spade a spade. The reason why we're so bitter is because we've been raised in a bitter world. We've been raised by bitter parents. We've been raised in a society that's just sinful. So all we know is chaos. All we know is bitterness. This is how we operate. We operate in negative thinking. We think negative first, positive second. That's how we think. We always think of the worst case scenario all the time. It's always the worst case scenario. We never look at the light at the end of the tunnel. Every time something happens, everybody's complaining. And then when the Most High help us, then we want to praise the Most High when He come and help us and save us. But when we're in the midst of stuff, it's always kind of complain and murmur, woe is me, this is the worst thing that ever happened. How am I going to get through it? It's always that. That's bitterness. That's your soul is bitter. So bitterness comes from years of trauma and sin. Anything that is contrary to Yah is bitterness, because Yah is peace. Hallelujah. So if you are in a constant mind state of negativity, hate to break it to you, your soul is in bitterness. All right? We can't live through our trauma. We can't live through our sinful nature. You have to let Yah purge the bitterness out of us. Hallelujah. You have to let Him purge the bitterness out of us. All right? So now we're going to look at an example. Let's go to Job or Job 21. And Job breaks down the bitterness of the soul pretty well. So now we look at, chapter 20. So Job's friend Zophar was, pretty much telling Job, hey man, whatever sin you did, you need to confess it, because I know you're wicked, because this A, B, and C is happening. So, hey man, get it out, man. Get it out. Whatever you're doing, get it out. Because right now it looks like you're doing something wicked. Something going on. You got boils. You lost everybody. You got no money no more. You lost everything. Just confess your sins. Let's move forward, right? And so Job's friend Zophar is pretty much like, hey man, the wicked man looks like this, all the outward stuff. So Job's friend pretty much was saying, all the outward appearance stuff is the reason why you're so wicked, because their outward appearance. Now, chapter 21, we see Job's response. So let's see how Job responded to his friend trying to chastise him for quote unquote being wicked. So let's look at what he says. What a wicked man is and what a wicked man look like. So then Job answered and said, listen carefully to my speech, and let this be your consolation. Bear with me that I may speak. And after I have spoken, keep mocking. As for me, is my complaint against man? And if it were, why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be astonished. Put your hand over your mouth, even when I remember I am terrified. And trembling takes hold of my flesh. Why do the wicked live and become old? Yes, become mighty in power. Their descendants are established with them in their sight, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull breeds without failure, their cow calves without miscarriage. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They sing to the tambourine and harp, and rejoice to the sound of the flute. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Yet they say to God, depart from us, for we do not desire the knowledge of your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve Him? I'm going to stop there. So in his response, he's saying, yo, you talking about me, but you see all these wicked folks is prospering? Seem like ain't nothing happening to them? What you talking about? Right? So far, it's like, man, the wicked man be prospering all the time. What you getting on me for? So let's keep going. So now, verse 16, indeed, their prosperity is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. How often is the lamp of the wicked put out? How often does their destruction come upon them? The sorrows God distributes in His anger. They are like straw before the wind and like chaff that storm carries away. They say God lays up one's iniquity for his children. Let him recompense him that he may know it. Let his eyes see his destruction. Let him drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what does he care about his household after him when the number of his months is cut in half? Can anyone teach God knowledge, since he judges those on high? One dies in his full strength, being wholly at ease and secure. His pails are full of milk, and the marrow of his bones is moist. Another man dies in the bitterness of his soul, never having eaten with pleasure. Say that again. Another man dies in the bitterness of his soul, never having eaten with pleasure. Right? So Job knew exactly what kept man from Yah. It is the bitterness of soul. That is the root of a countenance, right? That is the root of a countenance that is always negative. And it keeps you from taking advantages of the opportunities to get you closer to God. So when your soul is bitter, your countenance is always negative. And when your countenance is always negative, you miss on opportunities that God put in front of you. So that's what makes a man wicked. The bitterness of soul, not the outward appearance stuff, not what he's prospering in or not prospering in. Most I don't care about money, status, he care less. What he cares about is your soul. Where's your heart's posture? That's what he cares about. All right. So if you have a bitterness of soul, that means you're always with a negative countenance. You're like the Israelites at Marah with water in front of you, and you still find a reason to complain. You can never see anything positive in your situation because you're bitter. And when you're bitter, you never see any positive outcomes, even when there's positive outcomes in front of you. That's what bitterness does. And so now that's an example of the wicked, what a wicked man truly looks like. That's a man with a bitterness of soul. Now let's look at what we should do whenever we do have bitterness of soul, because let's be honest, all of us have some level of bitterness in our soul. Otherwise, we'd be caught up with Elijah in them, right? So obviously, there's always some purging of bitterness that needs to happen. There needs to be some purging of this bitterness. So here goes an example of what we should do when we have bitterness of soul. Let's go to 1 Samuel 1 and 8. So 1 Samuel 1 and 8. All right, so this is Hannah's vow. This is, her womb is closed, and she wants to have a child, and so at this point she's very bitter, and this is what she does in her bitterness. Because all of us have bitterness, but what are you doing with your bitterness? Are you acting like it is not there, or are you taking it to Yah and letting Him heal you of the bitterness? So verse 8, it says, then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Bless you. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord, and she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. I'm gonna stop there. So she was in bitterness of soul, and what she decided to do, instead of complain, she did what? Prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. And it happened as she continued praying before the Lord. So she's still in her bitterness of soul, and she's continuing to pray. She's continuing to pray. She's not stopping. That Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah spoke in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, how long will you be drunk? Put your wine away from you. Right. But Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor intoxicating drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Yeah. Do not consider your maidservant a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief, I have spoken until now. Then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you asked of him. And she said, let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. So we have to be like Hannah. Give our bitterness of soul over to Yah and allow him to give us peace. But we have to be willing to give it over. One of the scary things of bitterness is that a lot of times when we think about bitterness, you only realize you're in a state of bitterness. You don't realize that you think everything around you is negative. You don't realize that the odors that you keep smelling everywhere is really you. That's the crazy thing about it. A lot of times we lack self-awareness. We don't realize that we have a lot of bitterness within us. And we refuse to acknowledge that we have a lot of things that we need to be freed from, things that need to be overcome. But we have to be willing to admit, right? Like it says in 1 John, confess your sins, he's faithful and righteous to forgive you your sins and cleanse you of all unrighteousness, right? So this is why, and this is a good one too. So bitterness can make you so self-protective, you view the entire world through a jaundiced eye, or a negative eye is what it means. So bitterness can make you so self-protective, you view the entire world through a negative eye, avoiding opportunities and relationships that could be fulfilling. That's what bitterness gets you. Unfulfilled, avoiding opportunities, missing opportunities, breaking relationships, not taking advantage of relationships that you need to have because you're always negative. You don't realize it. So I just thought that was interesting. So this is why the Omer count is so important. This is why it's so important, because on our journey to the mountain, or our journey to revelation, each day we are taking away more and more bitterness. Each day we're growing and growing more in Yah's character, and more bitterness should go away as we count each day, as we go through the exercises, as we go through the meditations. Like each day should be taking away more and more bitterness, right? More and more bitterness. We should be growing in, discipline and loving kindness and all of the different attributes of the Most High, the foundation, the kingdom mindset. We should be growing in all of these attributes, right? We should be growing in all of these. So each and every day through this journey of the Omer count, going to Shavuot, we should be chopping away at the bitterness of soul. Chopping away at the bitterness of soul, letting Yah purge us of the bitterness that's within us. That way, when we get to the end, we can ascend up the mountain like a Moshe, like a Haron, like the 70 elders. Right? So each day, we are taking away more bitterness of soul and replacing it with the character and peace of Yah. So each day, you're going through a character development boot camp. That's what I call it. So this time period is like a character development boot camp, where he's trying to build character, man. He's trying to build more and more character. At the end of the day, that is what he cares about. The point of applying the Torah is that you should be building more character, right? Building more character, being more like a mirror of Yah, right? So now the reason why all of this is so important on our journey to the mountain is because the more impurity and bitterness we shed off, the more revelation we can receive. Hence, more knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, which gets us closer to the divine. So the more bitterness we chop off, the more revelation we can receive. So what made Moses, Aaron, 70 elders, what made them so unique when it was time to ascend, when it was time to go up into the mountain? What made them so unique? What made these people so unique? We're going to look at it. Let's go to Deuteronomy 5. Look at what made these people so unique. Let's see what made them so unique. Because this is my first time really seeing this way. And it's really like opened my eyes. Let's look at this. So Deuteronomy 5, verse 1, this is the Ten Commandments. This is when the Ten Commandments were reviewed. And it says, and Moses called all Israel and said to them, hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your hearing today, that you may learn them and be careful to observe them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. The Lord did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, those who are here today, all of us who are alive. The Lord talked with you face to face on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I stood between the Lord and you at that time to declare to you the word of the Lord, for you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up the mountain. So stop there. So when I read this, this shows that the rest of Israel also had an opportunity to go up the mountain with Moshe. They didn't have to sit at the foot of the mountain if they had the same countenance as Moshe. So that really struck me like, wow, what's stopping us from being like Moshe? What's stopping us from being like the 70 elders? Aaron, these people. What's stopping us from being like these people? Now, once again, ain't nothing wrong with the foot in the mountain. That's still, we pretty close. So not poo-pooing on that. But the goal is to go to the top, to get up there, right? So what was so unique about them? It was their reverence for Yah. Point blank period. They chose daily who they were going to serve. They were consistent in their servitude of the Most High. They completely sold out to Yah. They were engrossed in the ways of Yah. They were willing, through the count, to get rid of bitterness every single day. That's what made them prepared to go up. And the rest of them had to sit at the foot. Because through the journey, there was not much bitterness being shed off. So by the time you get to the end of the point, it's like, okay, you sit at the foot, Moshe, you come up. So now we're going to look at some commentary. We'll look at the Musar. So we're going to look at this particular book in the Musar, or part of the Musar was the Shnei Lakot Habarit. So this is a section of the Musar that compiles ethics, mysticism, and law. And so the Musar as a whole, what it is, it focuses on morality and it focuses on spiritual character development. So the Musar focuses a lot on spiritual character development. So that's what the Musar is. All right. So let's see. Somebody click on the picture from me. We're going to look at this particular passage within the Musar. I thought this was good. It's all right. Oh, my bad. Go back. All right. All right. All right. So yes, on this side. So scroll. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, another way. Other way. Keep going. Keep going. Where it says the secret. Oh, there we go. We there. Keep going. Right there. So, all right. So this explains Deuteronomy 5 and 5. So it says this is the secret dimension of Deuteronomy 5 and 5. I stand between God and you. It is well known to the students of Kabbalah that the root of Anarchy. So this word is a word that can mean degradation, like degrading self, or I guess lowering self, things of that nature, from the emanation of Banah. So we have explained that 50, freedom, i.e. equals redemption. So when Moses was in heaven, i.e. had attained the 50th level of Banah, or wisdom, he had a clear vision, right? So this means that he viewed things through the original light, which God had withdrawn from earth after Adam's sin. This is another way of explaining that God spoke to both Moses and the people of Israel. So God spoke to you face to face. If the Jewish people were on such a level, it suggests that there were no barriers between them and God. How do we explain that Moses is supposed to have provided a barrier between them? I.e., I was standing between God and you. We must conclude that there was indeed no barrier. That once Moses utilized the original light, this removed his presence as a barrier. By receiving the Torah and attaining the above described level of Banah, Moses had fulfilled his mission as the reincarnation of Havel. I think it's Havel, meaning breath. So he had fulfilled his mission as the reincarnation of the breath. He added the hay from the Havel to his name. He ascended the mountain, which was burning with fire, until the very heart of heaven. So the word Lev is a reference to the total of 32 paths that led to these insights. The basis of the whole Sefer Yezerah The letter Hey, which was added to Moses' name, further symbolized that he had received and assimilated all the 5 books of the Torah. I have found the following in the writings of our Resolve, when the Torah quotes Moses saying, when I ascended mountain in order to receive the stone tablets, etc., Deuteronomy 9:9. You can take the first letters of the first 3 words and construct the acronym Haval, the breath. So this supports our contention that Moses completed the task of the breath by attaining the 50th level of wisdom. So we see Moses was able to consistently reach the 50th level and receive profound revelation from Yah. So we should have the same goal. We should have the same goal. Be just like Moses, right? We can attain that 50th level. All it takes is discipline. Yeah. It takes want to. It takes heart posture. It takes effort. We talked about earlier. To want to do better, to want to get better, to want to be purged of your sin, of your wickedness, of your bitterness. You have to want it though. It's all about how much of Yah you want. We talk about that all the time. How much of him do you want? You can have it. There's no, oh, well, he chose him to be more special than everybody else. Life is a choice. Life is a choice. Right? Life is a choice. Yah is about predestination, not preordination. It's predestination. You still have a choice. You know, he gives you path. He gives you a path, right? So we should have the same goal. The road to the mountain is a road to revelation. The more self we shed, the more we put on Yahshua, the more revelation we receive. The more revelation we receive, the more we can pass down to the next generations. All right. So this next slide. So there does not have to be limits to the revelation you receive. So I think click on this slide. So we're going to look at an in-depth look at Moses' Mount Sinai experiences, right? So we know throughout the text, we know Moshe ascended up Mount Sinai plenty of times, numerous times. He ascended many times. All right. So this commentary goes into Rambam and Rashi and how they had different perspectives on Moshe's Mount Sinai experiences. And so I just wanted to kind of look into their teachings on this and kind of expound on what they were saying. I thought this was very interesting. So are there limits to the revelation received at Mount Sinai? All right, so let's go down. All right, so let's see. All right, so our double portion of Bahar Beku Kotai opens with a tantalizing simple statement. The Eternal One spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, Leviticus 25:1. This may not yet strike you as remarkable. God, after all, talks to Moses all the time. And no one contests, at least within the Torah itself, that some of that talking happened at Sinai. Still, why mention that now? Why, after a whole book of Leviticus with all its many laws and details, does the Torah suddenly return us to Mount Sinai? So medieval commentator extraordinaire Rashi, responding to a possibly heretical idea, asserts that this phrase means precisely the opposite of what you might think. It would be natural to assume that because the Torah makes special mention that these specific things were said on Mount Sinai, other things weren't. Maybe, for example, Moses got the general ideas of the Mitzvah Sinai, but then worked out the details himself when he came down from the mountain. So Rashi's whole point, really, not really no thing is that when he ascended to the mount, that he received a portion of the Torah and then kind of worked out the kinks as time went on, right? So let's see. So maybe, for example, Moses got the general ideas of the mitzvot at Sinai, but then worked out the details himself when he came down from the mountain. There are, after all, some mitzvot first given in Exodus or Leviticus that are reiterated with new and different details in Deuteronomy. Just maybe a person might think the Sinai moment wasn't quite as complete as we would think. Not so, insists Rashi. The Torah brings us back to Sinai in this verse precisely to insist that every divine command that was spoken to Moses came from Sinai, including both general principles and minute details. All right. So now I'm going down to Rambam, Spanish commentator Rambam, who, as is his custom, restates Rashi's points only to vehemently disagree with them, saying, and this seems entirely wrong in my eyes, sees this moment differently. This is, he believes, just the next step in the story. Moses went up to Sinai, got the Torah, came down and dealt with the golden calf, in response to which the people needed to build the tabernacle. Once they had the tabernacle, they needed to learn how to use it. And those instructions ended with last week's Torah portion. Now, at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, as we shift our focus away from sacrifices and look forward to our new lives in the land of Israel, the Torah reminds us that these laws are just the next chapter of the Torah taught to Moses at Sinai. The important message is not about minute details and general principles. It is about the vital connection between Sinai moment and these mitzvot that take effect only when we enter the promised land. Let's keep going. So returning to Sinai, according to Rambam's teaching, means connecting our immediate story to the larger narratives of our people and our tradition. This year at my very unusual Passover Seder, as we gathered together with family and friends over Zoom, we considered that this was not the first time Jews had needed to adapt our Passover observance. So I'm going through the rest of the Talmud. So the Talmud, in one of its most incredible stories, offers yet another vision of Sinai moment. In Tractate Menachot 29b, we learn that, according to Rav, while Moses was on Mount Sinai, he took a magical journey forward in time to the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva. So in the Talmud, it talks about this time where Moshe visits Rabbi Akiva and listens in on his teachings of the Torah. And I thought this was very interesting, and this got me to thinking. So while Moses was on Mount Sinai, he took a magical journey forward in time to the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva. Sitting in the back row while the great Akiva taught, Moses was utterly confused. His spirit fell as the argument spun around in circles, and he just couldn't follow. One of the other students raised a hand and asked Rabbi, "Where in the Torah did you learn this?" Akiva answered, "Halakha leMoshe Sinai." This law was given to Moses at Sinai. Then Moses' mind was set at ease. His own Torah, he understood, was so much larger than even he himself could understand. So I'm gonna stop there. So your revelation that you receive is not for you. It's for the people around you. It's not the Torah is not about you. It's not about self-gain. It's not about self-agenda. It's not about personal agenda. Most High gives you revelation to then you can pass it down and feed everybody around you. That's the purpose of the revelation. So when Moshe sat by Akiva listening to the teaching, he's looking confused. It's because when Most High gave Moshe the Torah, it wasn't for necessarily, it wasn't like Moshe understood everything all at once, or that he had a full understanding of just how everything's going to play out at the end. But it was given to Moshe, that way he can pass down the Torah for generations to come. He's supposed to pass the baton away. Everybody else can be better than him. It's about passing the baton. That's the point of revelation, to pass the baton over. So he's sitting in the class confused because it's like, I don't remember that. But when he realized the rabbi's talking about, this is what Moshe, this comes from, this was given to Moses on Sinai. Moses realized, this is bigger than me. It's bigger than me. It's way bigger than me. It's about generations after me coming to a higher level of understanding. That's the point. That was the reason why he received a revelation. That way, as generations continue, people continue to get more and more revelation and continue to grow greater in understanding. So that was the point of revelation. So returning to Sinai, according to Rav's teaching, means seeing ourselves as embodying Torah that looks forward at generations to come. So I thought this was interesting. So let's scroll down a little bit more. Hold on. All right, a little bit. Go up a little bit. Keep going. All right. Ooh, wait a minute. All right. So returning to Sinai, according to Rav's teaching, means seeing ourselves as embodying Torah that looks forward at generations to come. My grandma Elaine, I thought this was a great story. My grandma Elaine of blessed memory taught me many things, none of which she would consider to be of religious import. Perhaps the most Jewish person I've ever known, she asserted that her own Judaism was Epicurean in nature, which mostly meant that she loved Jewish food and music. My own Jewish life, defined by observance, study, and prayer, would be an absolute mystery to her. And yet I see her in just about everything I do. Like Moses, she didn't know where her Torah was going, but its power and depth have grown long after her passing. So that's the importance of the revelation. It's not about necessarily the now all the time. It's about whatever revelation you get, using the revelation that you get and being able to pass it down the way people can go further than where you were at. All right? So I thought this was a powerful story. Let's keep going. And so it says, and yet I see her in just about everything I do. Like Moses, she didn't know where her Torah was going, but its power and depth have grown long after her passing. When I imagine my own future grandchildren, I think of Moses at Akiva's yeshiva, and I am moved as I return to Sinai. So we have to think about our lives. I know a lot of times we poo-poo our past and stuff, but you got to realize, even though we went in the way, parents went in the way, your mama, your daddy, your uncles and grandparents or whoever was in your life, even though they weren't in the way, they instilled something in you that led you to the way. Yeah. So that's the importance of revelation. Revelation can fall on anybody. It can fall on Balaam, it can fall on a donkey.
All right.
So it's not about how much you know. It's about receiving the revelation and then using it to pass it down to the next generation. It's not about necessarily being all knowing. You might not get it all before you die, but at least the amount of revelation you get, you use your time wisely, you use your words wisely, and you bring forth light to the people around you, your children, your friends, strangers. Just spread light. Whether you know a little or know a lot, you spread light, and then they're going to take it and they're going to run with the baton. That's the point of revelation, is that you use the revelation to give it to somebody else, and then they run with the baton, and they take it further than what you gave to them. That's what revelation is all about. It's not about self-gain. It's not about, oh, I know how to prophesy. I got this great gift. It's not about all that. Is the revelation you're receiving, is it being passed down? Because whether you agree with that or not, your parents, people in your past, somebody told you something to where when God knocked on your door, you was able to receive the truth. I'm grateful for my parents. Yeah. They were not in the way, but they taught me moral things. They taught me how to be good in character. They taught me so many different Torah-like characteristics. That way, when I heard the Torah, it resonated with my soul.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all right.
So that's the importance of revelation. So now that we're in this magnificent way, now it should be easier for for our children to catch on to the Torah.
Yeah.
I'll stop right there. So let's go on to, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right, here we go. All right, so let's see, next slide. All right, so think about that. So when we return to Sinai, we have to understand that our revelations are meant to help the next generations reach new heights. Just like Moshe, the man who the Torah was revealed to still didn't understand some of the stuff that was going on. It's like, hold on, I don't remember that, huh? But it's like, oh, I get it. It's not about what I understand. It's what you revealed to me. I was able to pass it down, and now they're carrying the baton. Got you. Makes sense. So that's the point of revelation. So whenever we go around our cycle, there should be more and more bitterness being taken away, more and more revelation, that way we can pass down more and more to our children, and then they can go to new heights. I might not be able to reach level 50. I might not be able to get there, but I'm going to instill in my children and children's children, and hopefully somebody else can reach level 50 if I don't get there. Once again, we have to be strong enough to put ourselves last and put others first. That's the walk. That's the way. Revelation ain't about you. Spiritual giftings ain't about you. Your relationship with Yah ain't about you. It's for you to be close to Him and for you to get others close to Him.
Yeah.
So that's why the ego got to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Ego got to die. Because ain't nothing about the Most High selfish. Ain't nothing about the Most High got nothing to do with self. But we try to put self in everything that got to do with God.
Yes, that's good.
We put self in everything. All right. So to close this out, this journey starting with Pesach is a journey of reconnecting with the divine. We have accumulated so much sin, trauma, and bad habits that it has caused our souls to be bitter in so many areas. Now that we have been freed from bondage, it is time now to let Yah chip away and our bitterness. That way he can give us peace, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So we can be a benefit and stand in the gap for the people around us and for the future generations we may not see.
Hallelujah.
Shalom.
Amen.
All right, so.